From the UK, this Saturday, April 26th, a Fatal Fury card will take place, being promoted on Riyadh season, but from Tottenham, the UK. And the two men who will be facing one another will be Chris Eubank Jr. and Conor Benn. These two have a story that maybe internationally people couldn't understand, but locally, domestically, out of the UK, it is the equivalent of seeing the offspring of Ali and Frazier coming together to face one another. The sons of the dads who in the 90s waged war against one another in historic bouts with blood that ran deep and animosity. So will history repeat itself when these two finally come together? It will be an interesting situation, and many people are highly anticipating this. But there's even more to the story. Let's talk about Eubank Jr. and Benn. The legend of Benn versus Eubank, Eubank versus Benn, was all set to kick off in October of 2022. That was when Chris Eubank Jr. and Conor Benn were originally slated in a promotion that would have been billed as Born Rivals. And leading right up to the fight, about a week before the event, Conor Benn tested positive for a banned substance. The fight was in jeopardy. Eubank Jr. had requested that £1 million be forwarded to him to go through with the bout. Benn's camp nixed that idea and claimed innocence. But what would happen is the fight would be canceled and we wouldn't get that matchup. Now, over in the UK, this fight meant a lot to the British boxing public. Their dads have a history between them where they had a rivalry that was so strong that it bore 2 bouts between the men, and forever a line of animosity between the two. They were just that bitter as rivals. Even if you go back and see the films of their dads in press conferences and interviews, it was must-see TV as well as their fights. So, could it be that more than 20 years later, the sons could produce the same? Well, in October of 2022, it fell through. The O2 Arena was supposed to host the bout, and because of the situation regarding Conor Benn, the fight was nixed. But things have changed. Time has passed. Benn is now back in the mix, in the sport, and he's fighting. And guess what? The fight is now on again this Saturday, April 26th. These two men are going to get it on. And it is quite a nice card for the boxing public. And because they've both only have grown since the situation, grown not only in status, but the public sentiment and desire for this fight has increased. And we have drama still to boot, because as they have been known to speak ill of each other in the public, what we have seen from these two men have been security surrounding when they've come face to face. And it's been entertaining, as I said, must see TV from Eubank Jr. and Benn. But it was nothing like when their major press launcher concluded with a face-off that had Eubank slamming an egg on the side of Conor Benn's face. Kind of a callback to the reason that he had given for testing positive for banned substances. He had declared that he had ingested too many eggs, and it was from the eggs that the positive chemical that he tested for came from those moments of eating the eggs. So, at the presser, he was egged by Eubank Jr. And it was a hilarious moment that saw both camps struggling and scuffling on the stage. It led to a famous sound bite later in the pressers leading up to where we're going, of Eubank telling Nigel Benn, who was there for that affair, he said that he had put his hand on Eubank Jr.'s neck. And he told him, he said, "I just want to say, if you ever touch me again, you won't get your hand back." And then it was in that moment that Conor Benn launched into a tirade about threatening my dad, and foul expletives followed as Benn told Eubank Jr. what he would do to him for threatening his dad. Again, must see TV. You see, these two are rivals, unlike what we've seen on the regular with boxing. We just haven't seen guys like this, and it's entertaining, I must say. I've said my piece about what I think about guys who test positive and pop dirty. But that's not what this video is about. It's about the promotion of this fight. And it should be entertaining. Now, Benn, who has campaigned at welterweight, is the smaller guy. He's the younger guy at 5'8". He's an orthodox fighter. He's 28 years old, and he has campaigned at welterweight for his career. Now, Eubank Jr. is 5'11", and he's now 35 years of age, and he has campaigned at middleweight, super middleweight, and has in his most recently half dozen fights or so been back at middleweight again. So putting this bout together, it was a concern that they would have to have a catch weight. But Benn fought his last couple of fights at 154 pounds against Rodolfo Orozco and Peter Dazn. So he's been inching closer to the 160-pound division, kind of flying under the radar. His most recent fight was in February of 2024. Now, Eubank Jr.'s most recent fight was against Camille Sersmeta, and that was in October of 2024, where he was able to get a TKO stoppage. Now, when you talk about these two men facing each other, what they will bring to the ring against one another, outside of hot spirit in the nature of their dads, the records read as such. We're going to see Eubank Jr. come in with his record of 34-3 with 25 KOs. He is a fighter that should have won a world title by now, and it has been spoken about heavily during the pressers. Benn has remarked that he has allowed his particular career sink into a place where he's no longer in title contention. And Benn feels that that's what's the difference, because he has yet to win a title himself, but he is youthful enough to have that consideration. Now, when we talk about the most recent loss that Eubank Jr. suffered, it was a January 2023 TKO stoppage in the 4th round to Liam Smith, a fight that he avenged 8 months later in a rematch where he stopped Smith in 10 rounds. The TKO loss to Liam was interesting. He had been down twice in the 4th round prior to the stoppage. But unbeknownst to most people in the crowd, Liam did strike Eubank Jr. with an elbow, which immediately brought a hematoma on his cheekbone. Most people thought it was a punch. It was an elbow, and the referee was behind Smith while Eubank Jr. was caught in the triangle. An elbow to the cheekbone is what dropped him, people, not a punch, even though he followed it up with shots as Eubank hit the canvas. Now, Eubank got up, but he was wobbled and quite naturally taken by surprise. He wasn't able to be steady on his feet, and the referee, Victor Laughlin, stopped the fight. He protested, but he looked wobbly. Could he have continued? Possibly. Sometimes the UK officials, they love to stop fights for guys. They give guys knockouts without a guy sometimes having truly earned it. And that was an illegal blow. Replays actually showed it, but they they kind of glossed over the situation. Prior to losing to Liam Smith, there was a fight where he fought for the IBO super middleweight title against George Groves. And in that fight, Eubank was cut above his right eye when they clashed heads in the third round. And the title was not on the line for Groves because he had a situation that made him not viable for the title. So it was a unanimous decision loss. And his first loss was a split decision loss for the British Commonwealth BBB of C and EBU middleweight titles against Billy Joe Saunders. And that was split decision back in November of 2014. So when you think about it, the experiences that Eubank Jr. has had places him in a situation where this fight could be a true motivating factor for him, even though he appears that he doesn't give into being emotionally invested in circumstances. I'm quite certain that he wouldn't want to let his dad down. Now, when we consider Conor Benn, his record now is presently 23-0 with 14 KOs. And as I stated earlier, he has not yet fought for a world title, but he's looking to do so after he says he bashes Eubank Jr.'s head in. I love how these guys talk when they're talking about offending one another offensively with assault and physical aggression. It's real entertaining to hear that. But overall, this should be an interesting battle between these two men. And I do believe that the ages and the weights could be a factor. That's kind of an intangible here. But they're motivated desires. You see, because the Eubank family owns the victories over the Benn family. So I know that Conor wants to avenge for his dad. And Eubank doesn't want to turn anything over or concede in the next generation. So we look with excitement and anticipation for these two men to come together to do their thing. And I do believe audiences will be quite entertained. The only thing left to do is to get out there and mix it up. Now, this event will be headlined by this main event, but on the undercard, there's the returning Liam Smith as he takes on Aaron McKenna, who's an undefeated fighter at 19-0, and it'll be in the middleweight division. Also, we're going to see light heavyweight action between Anthony Yarde as he rematches again Lyndon Arthur. These two men have experience in the ring with one another, and it's going to be interesting because Lyndon Arthur is coming in with a great deal more confidence, having accomplished some things since the last time they met. Yarde hasn't been as active as you may have wanted him to be, but he's still a talent in that light heavyweight division and is often overlooked because of his inactivity. But in the ring, athletically, Yarde can still get some things done. Also, there's going to be a cruiserweight battle as a returning Chris Billum Smith is going to take on Brandon Glanton. Now, this fight will be interesting because Glanton, who's 33 and 5'11", is going up against Billum Smith, who's 6'3", okay? And he's 34. So will Brandon look to gain notoriety with a victory over Billum Smith? That'll be interesting. The last time we saw Billum Smith was in November of 2024, where he lost a unanimous decision to Gilberto Zurdo Ramirez. So he's looking to come back. And that's the second loss of his career, whereas Glanton has lost twice, but he has lost on the minor circuit of boxing. And then lastly, there's one more match to pay attention to, as we have Vidal Riley, another cruiserweight who's undefeated, 12-0, taking on Chevon Clark. Now Clark, who now is 10-1, suffered a split decision loss to Frenchman Leonardo Mosquera back in December of 2024, is looking to get back in the winning lane, and we'll see if Vidal Riley is up to the challenge to turn him away. Riley is presently 12-0, and he's 27 to Chevon's 34. He's an orthodox fighter to Chevon's southpaw, and he's 6'1", Vidal, as Chevon is 5'11 and a half. So we're gonna find out between these two men who's gonna win and put themselves in a position to be able to possibly challenge for a world title later in the year. This is a pretty darn good card, and being dubbed Fatal Fury Part 1, because it's in the UK, we'll follow up the following week with another Fatal Fury in the US. You see, Riyadh season events outside of Saudi are starting to take place. And again, the cards are bangers from top to bottom. Think about it. It is really worth tuning in to see this. But what do you think? Do you believe that Conor Benn can take that legacy for his family against against Eubank Jr.? Or will Eubank Jr. protect the family's pearls? Leave comments and discuss. This is Stormy B-Man. Shout out to the mighty LDBC and Liberated Perspective, a third eye view of the world. For more content such as this, please like, comment, subscribe, and share. Let me know how you see this turning out. And if you're gonna tune in, which fight on the card are you highly anticipating? Because all of them are pretty good matchups. Peace to everyone out there, and everyone please remain safe.